I'm Patrick Gerrard from the Diocese of Birmingham. I'm the Bishop's Advisor for the Environment, but I'm speaking really as the Parish Priest of St Michael's, Baddesley, Clinton. I want to share my screen and share a picture of St Michael's. So there we go. Hopefully you can see that. And so there's the church. So it's a rural church in the Diocese of Birmingham. And this is the story whereby it moved to becoming a carbon neutral church. It was probably a fairly low energy use church anyway. It's a bit out in the sticks. There's no gas supply to the church. There's no oil heating. Everything's electric. There isn't even a water supply to the church. It's right on the southeast edge of the Birmingham diocese in the countryside. The other interesting thing about the church is it gets an awful lot of visitors because it's very near to the National Trust property at Baddesley, Clinton. So a lot of the visitors who come to visit the National Trust come up to visit the church as well, or at least they did in pre-COVID times. That's what the church looks like on the inside. And it attracts a congregation of about 20. So you can see it's, imagine it's fairly full, even when it has just 20 people there. If you look carefully, you can see these Underpew heaters that were installed. And you can also see the the LED light bulbs. So these have been part of the journey to being a carbon neutral church. The story starts in about 2016 when we had persistent trouble with our electrics. We had existing Underpew heating, but it really didn't work very well and it was becoming very old and unmanageable. And we also had wider trouble with our wiring, which just needed replacing and updating, and problems with our metering as well, and we ended up with a new meter. And it became apparent that lying behind these problems, there was a bigger problem in that our system was rated for 24 kilowatts, but at times when we had all our heating on, we were actually using 28 kilowatts. So we had to come up with ways of reducing the total amount of electricity we used. So the first thing was the LED lights. We replaced every single light except the one that's too high to reach. And then we started looking at heating, replacing the Underpew heaters with more efficient models, more modern efficient models that used less electricity. So to cut a long story short, those heaters were installed in February 2018. And there's a picture. So under those small pews which sit 3 adults, we have 2 Underpew heaters. We've done some experiments. Initially, we recommended one bigger unit in the middle, which would have been a cheaper solution. But we found the person sitting in the middle was too hot and the people at the ends not hot enough. Whereas with 2 smaller units spread more fully over the bottom of the pew, you got a much better result. The idea here is to create a bubble of heat around the people sitting in the pew so that you're not heating all the space in the church, but you are truly heating the people. And you can see from this picture that we've retained the old wall heaters. I think when we first installed the system, we were a little suspicious of whether it would really work, this bubble of heat effect around the people in the pews. We retained the old wall heaters as well. I want to show you the next picture. That's more from underneath, so you can see the heaters more clearly, and you can see how they're mounted too. The system started February 2018. And initially, we were a bit suspicious of it, and we ran it like we used to run it before, trying to heat the whole volume of the church. And we turned the heaters on 3.5 hours before the service, and the wall heaters too. And gradually we got more confident and realised that actually we only needed to turn the heaters on perhaps 3/4 of an hour before the service, perhaps even half an hour before the service was fine, and we didn't really need the wall heaters at all. And in fact, we don't routinely use those now at all. And the effect on our electricity has been quite dramatic. So you can see they were installed in February 18. We didn't initially change the way we use them. We continued to turn them on 3.5 hours before the service. And then we did start to change. Now, we had trouble over the summer with our thermostat. We have a lot of visitors in our church, as I said, and they do like to adjust the thermostat for us, and that was causing problems. But by the beginning of the winter, we'd got the hang, really, of using the heaters as they're meant to be used to create this bubble fuel effect, and our energy consumption fell very dramatically. And by good fortune, the Treasurer was also trying to find a cheaper way of buying electricity, and landed just by commercial decision, not really particularly an environmental consideration, but commercially driven, on a green tariff from Opus Energy. So that meant that the electricity into the church was effectively carbon-free, and that's the only energy into the church. So the church was very nearly carbon neutral at that point. At this point, the PCC did become interested in the carbon neutral objective. In the end, we paid, I think, £80 to Climate Stewards for a 4-ton offset, which covered all the transport of our parishioners to and from church throughout the year. So with that offset for 2019, we were carbon neutral. So I think that's the end of my slides, and I'll